Imagine this. You're standing in your living room, and the water tastes like gasoline. It's rising past your knees, then your waist, then your chest, and it's not clean. It's brown. It smells like sewage and chemicals. And you realize, even if you survive the flood, drinking this water raw will kill you, just as dead. In one New Orleans neighborhood, a civil engineer, a man who literally designed water treatment systems for a living, survived by boiling toilet water on a $20 camping stove. 3 of his neighbors tried the same trick without boiling. They were dead within 48 hours. The expert barely made it. What chance do you think you have? Most people don't die from the storm. They die from the decisions they made before the storm ever hit. And every decision you're about to hear was written in blood. Hurricane Katrina wasn't just a disaster. It was a survival manual carved into history by 1,800 deaths. Here's what I'm going to show you. The 3 decisions that killed 1,200 people in the first 48 hours. The psychological breaking point that turned neighbors into threats. The invisible killers that are still killing people 20 years later. And the dirt cheap tools that saved lives when high-tech gear failed. By the end, you'll know more about surviving the next disaster than 80% of the people who died in Katrina. That's not me being dramatic. That's just math. Because the next big disaster won't ask if you're ready. It'll just come. And when it does, you won't have time to Google how to purify water. You'll either know or you won't. You'd think the deadliest moment of Katrina was when the levees broke. It wasn't. For most people, the disaster was sealed before a single drop of rain fell. The first fatal decision was denial. Do you leave or do you stay? Tens of thousands ignored the evacuation order. And here's the hard truth. Nearly half of them could have left. They had cars. They had gas. They had time. But they didn't move. Why? Fear of looking stupid. Nobody wanted to spend money evacuating and then be mocked when the storm veered away. That fear of embarrassment killed more people than the wind. In disaster research, there's a term for this: normalcy bias. It's your brain's refusal to believe tomorrow won't look like today, even when the alarms are screaming. It's why passengers stay seated on planes filling with smoke. And it's why 1,200 people died in New Orleans. But let's say you made the right call. You evacuated. You survived the storm. Congratulations, you just passed the first test. Now comes the second, and it's darker. It's called the 72-hour wall. After 3 days without power, water, or help, something shifts. Communities either bind together or fracture in a competition. And what you grab before leaving decides which side of that wall you land on. So here's the test. Imagine you have 60 seconds to grab just one of these. MED, a week's supply of your prescription medication. PIC, irreplaceable family photos and documents. Cash, $500 in small bills. Comment right now. MED, PIC, or cash. Don't overthink it. Just pick. I'll wait. Okay, here's what just happened. If you scrolled and saw other people's choices, you probably noticed most picked MED or PIC. Makes sense, right? Medicine keeps you alive. Photos are priceless. Cash is just paper. Except after 72 hours, only one of those choices still works. And it isn't medicine or photos. Medicine runs out. You take your last pill on day 6. Then what? Photos won't hydrate you. But cash? Cash buys water from the guy who hoarded it. Cash gets you a ride out. Cash is the only universal currency when everything else collapses. But here's the brutal twist. Your survival depends on other people choosing wrong. If everyone grabs cash, cash is worthless. If everyone hoards water, no one has anything to sell. You needed strangers to pick MED or PIC so that your cash had value. That's the 72-hour wall. Your survival isn't just about what you prepared. It's about what everyone else failed to prepare. And here's where morality cracks. Because after 72 hours, your neighbor isn't your neighbor anymore. They're competition. You've got 15 seconds to decide. Do you share or do you survive? In the next section, I'll show you what happened when those 15 seconds ran out. When people had to choose between being good and being alive. And why. If you were there, you'd probably choose survival too. But first, scroll back and check what you commented. MED, PDC, or cash. If you chose the majority, you may have just signed your own death warrant. You passed the first 2 tests. You left before the storm, and you grabbed the right item. Now comes the third, and this is where human nature gets ugly. Because after 72 hours, people didn't just break into chaos. They broke into 3 types. Which type you became determined whether you made it out, or whether you became a statistic. Type 1, the paralyzed. These were people who survived the storm physically, but couldn't adapt mentally. They waited, sat on rooftops expecting helicopters, refused to break into stores even for water because that's illegal. They followed the old rules. even though the rules had stopped working. At the Superdome, rescue workers found a man who died of dehydration sitting next to a vending machine. He had a metal pipe in his hand. He tried to break the glass, but couldn't bring himself to actually do it. He died waiting for permission. The paralyzed couldn't accept that the world had changed, and that hesitation killed them. Type 2. The predators. These were people who saw the collapse and exploited it. Not just criminals, ordinary people who realized the rules were gone and decided that meant everything was fair game. At the Superdome, groups formed. Not rescue groups, resource control groups. They hoarded water, then sold it back to desperate families. They traded insulin for jewelry. In one case, a diabetic woman was beaten unconscious by two men who saw her insulin vials. They weren't diabetic, didn't even know what insulin was for. They just knew it was medicine, and medicine meant leverage. They traded those vials to a pharmacy worker for 3 gallons of water. She survived, but lost a leg to infection because she couldn't regulate her blood sugar for the next 5 days. And they justified it the same way most of us would. If I don't take it, someone else will. At least I need it more than they do. Survival instinct layered with rationalization. It's uncomfortable, but that's human nature. The predators survived, but at a cost most of them still can't sleep with. Type 3. The networked. These were the people who survived because they prepared, not just with supplies, but with people. In the lower Ninth Ward, one neighborhood survived almost untouched. Not because they were wealthy, not because they had guns, because 6 months before Katrina, they'd started monthly block meetings. They knew which neighbors had medical training, who had tools, who had boats. When the flood came, they didn't panic. They executed a plan. They pooled resources, shared generators, organized rooftop rescues using walkie-talkies they distributed in advance. While the Superdome descended into chaos, this one neighborhood functioned like a micro-government. The network didn't just survive. They proved that the best survival tool isn't a weapon or a stockpile. It's knowing who you can trust when everything collapses. So here's the uncomfortable question. Which type are you? Would you wait for help that never comes? Take what you need, no matter the cost? Or build a network before it's too late? Because here's the truth. You don't get to choose your type in the moment. You become the type you've been building toward your entire life. So start building now. Because in the next disaster, the predators and the paralyzed won't be your biggest threat. The deadliest killers will be the ones you can't see coming. And one of them is still hospitalizing Katrina survivors 2 decades later. That's next. You know the threats now. Normalcy bias, the 72-hour wall, the 3 types, and the invisible killers. But knowledge doesn't save you. Preparation does. Here's what actually worked in Katrina, and what'll work in the next disaster. And I'm warning you, most of it contradicts everything Hollywood taught you about survival. Myth 1. Survival requires expensive gear. Guns, freeze-dried food, tactical backpacks. Reality. People who survived Katrina did it with trash bags, Sharpies, and whistles. Trash bags became emergency signals visible from helicopters half a mile away. Sharpies let people write blood type and medical info on their skin if unconscious. Dog whistles cut through helicopter noise when human voices couldn't. The man with a $3,000 tactical kit drowned. The woman with a $2 trash bag got rescued on day 3. Cheap beats complex. Visible beats armed. Myth 2. Stockpile months of supplies. Reality. Most stockpiles were ruined within hours. Water contaminated. Food spoiled. Batteries corroded. Survivors thrived with redundancy, not volume. 3 water sources. Bottled. Purification tablets, and knowledge of clean wells. 2 communication methods. Cell phone and ham radio. Multiple evacuation routes mapped. You don't need 90 days of food. You need 3 days of supplies and 5 ways to get more. Redundancy beats hoarding. Myth 3. Survival is about self-reliance. Reality. The lower Ninth Ward neighborhood that survived had a phone tree. When one person spotted rising water, they activated a chain. Each called 3 neighbors, who called 3 more. Within 15 minutes, 60 families were evacuating. They pre-assigned roles. Medical, navigation, boat operation, generator management. No improvisation. Execution of a practice plan. Solo survivors got lucky. Network survivors executed systems. Here's your 72-hour toolkit. And notice what's not on this list. No guns, no tactical gear, no months of freeze-dried food. Communication. Ham radio or walkie-talkies, because cell towers die first. Signaling. Trash bags, whistles, glow sticks, because rescuers need to find you. Information. Offline maps, neighbor skills list, evacuation routes, because GPS fails when satellites go dark. Water. Purification tablets, not just bottles, because bottles run out in 48 hours. Medical, Sharpa for blood type/allergies on skin. Basic first aid, because if you're unconscious, this is what saves you. Total cost, under $150. That's less than most people spend on streaming services in 2 months, and $49,850 cheaper than what FEMA pays per rescue person. In the final section, I'm going to ask you to open your pantry right now and count something. It'll take 60 seconds. The number you get will tell you exactly how many days you'd last in the next disaster. Most people guess 7 to 10 days. Most people are wrong. Let's see if you are. Alright, this is it. The 60-second survival test. I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. Answer honestly. Don't overthink. Your answers will show exactly how long you'd survive the next disaster. Ready? Let's go. If the power went out right now, for a week, how many days of food do you have that doesn't require cooking or refrigeration? Think fast. Don't count frozen items or pasta that needs boiling. Count canned goods, protein bars, peanut butter. Got it. Most people guess 5 to 7 days. Reality. The average American household has 2.3. Above 3, ahead of 80% of people. Below 2. Here's your first vulnerability. How many neighbors do you know well enough to trust in an emergency? Not wave at, actually know their skills and contact info. 0 to 1, type 1, paralyzed. 2 to 4, transitioning. 5 plus, type 3, networked, an advantage most will never have. If cell towers went down, how would you communicate? Walkie-talkies, ham radio, pre-planned meeting spot, or hope? Hope. You're gambling. Anything else? You understand redundancy. The key difference between survivors and statistics. 0 to 1, prepared answers. Vulnerable, but now aware. 2. Average. Survival depends on luck. 3. Ready. Not perfect, but enough to matter. Preparation isn't paranoia. It's knowing before panic hits. Type 3 isn't luck, it's planning. Katrina killed 1,800, mostly from pre-storm decisions. You've learned normalcy bias, the 72-hour wall, types, invisible killers, and the counterintuitive toolkit. Now ask yourself, what will you do with this knowledge? If you made it to the end, comment 8% below. Then seriously, go fill out that neighborhood phone tree. Disasters won't wait.